Hey guys, before we get started, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our awesome new member, Jeff. Members like Jeff help keep the Human Echoes deathbed full of amazing flesh-dissolving acid. And they get access to awesome stuff like the bonus podcast. To find out more about the benefits of becoming a member, go to humanechoes.com and click the Become a Member button. Hello everybody and welcome to the Human Echoes podcast, the show where we review oddball movies, have oddball discussions, and occasionally take questions from you, the oddball fans.
I'm Tony Southcott.
I'm Albert Berg, and it is the end of August. It's September now, Tony, at least when this episode airs, and you know what that means.
That means Viewer's Choice Month.
No, that means it's Christmas time now!
No, it's not.
Christmas!
Christmas time doesn't start until Black Friday.
The snow is coming down.
And if you've got snow in Florida, we got some like day after tomorrow stuff going on.
In my heart. There's snow in my heart, Tony, which...
The last time I heard somebody say there's snow in my heart, they were referring to cocaine.
I don't even know how you would get it in there. Is that like an injection thing? Or I thought
I'm guessing, just like gets in your bloodstream. I mean, that'll eventually pass into your heart.
Christmas is in my heart in all the days of the year, Tony. I don't know if you know that, but especially, I feel it coming now. I feel it coming on. I love my Christmas music, and I'm gonna play it. But Tony is right. I'm making a little joke there, but it is, in fact, Viewer's Choice Month, where the viewers and listeners, viewers is not so much anymore because the YouTube portion of the podcast doesn't have as much video. It's just the still image. Because we're lazy.
It's a little bit of laziness, a little bit of like, it kind of takes your focus away from the conversation when you're like, oh my God, I'm on camera. I know I look terrible today, but I'm just going to pretend that it's okay.
It does. It is nice. That's still laziness for me. It's like, hey, I don't have to shave before I do the podcast anymore. I do get dressed. I do that.
I don't do the podcast like pantless like a lot of people do whenever they're talking about working from home. Like there's just a certain level of professionalism I need to feel if I'm going to be on point for something like this.
Also, I had to take my kid to school today and they don't approve of doing that in the bathrobe. I don't know if that's actually a rule. I haven't seen that written down anywhere, but I don't feel comfortable going to a 2-year-old school in a bathrobe.
Well, if you can't get arrested for it, it's probably okay. But let's just not push that boundary too hard.
Don't say hard. But we have a poll up on our site, and to pull back the curtain so everybody knows, we are actually recording this on the 30th of August. So, voting has not technically closed yet. However, we are reviewing the top voted movie currently in the hopes that it will not be unseated by 5 other movies in the next 24 hours. And that movie is Deathbed, the Bed That Eats.
And this one is brought to us specifically by Mr. Rich Alex, who rallied his coworkers and everybody else to just start throwing votes at this thing.
Which is my favorite thing. I just love the idea of people like going to their like coworkers who have never heard of the podcast and be like, go to humanechoes.com. There it is. It's at the top. You need to click on this. You need to vote. You need to vote for Deathbed, the Bed That Eats, and Santa with Muscles, and I forget what all else he had.
Yeah, I can't remember the third video from that. I think Santa with Muscles is a little bit down the list, but it might be able to make it. Like, it all depends on how things shake out today.
That's my favorite thing about Viewer's Choice Month so far, is just that it gets people talking to people who haven't heard about the podcast. And I can tell you what my least favorite thing about Viewer's Choice Month so far is Deathbed, the Bed That Eats, the movie.
Hey, at least it was free on YouTube.
Movie. It was free on YouTube, that's true. So I'm going to go into the history of this because it almost doesn't really warrant a quote-unquote review, although we will talk about this. But this was directed by a guy named George Barry, written by a guy named George Barry, produced and I don't think starring, but George Barry's all over this. And I'm assuming it's an early sort of indie film project, which is interesting because there wasn't as much of that back then. Sort of the indie boom was in the 90s, but it really feels like this guy with sort of some people that he got together and a couple of his friends and a camera went out and shot kind of the best movie that he could, and then sort of forgot about it because it never got. I mean, I'm sure there was like some kind of a screening somewhere. It got a release, but he just sort of let it go by the wayside. And then, like, flash forward to 2003, he's reading on the internet and he's finding out that people are like obsessed with this crazy movie, Deathbed, the Bed That Eats. Not obsessed, but just sort of like, can you believe there's a movie called Deathbed, the Bed That Eats? And it has this weird cult following. And he decides to put it out on DVD in 2003. Like 20 or 30 years after he puts it, like, originally made the movie. He was just like, oh, I almost forgot about that thing. Huh. All right, well, people think this is cool. I guess I'll put it on DVD.
And then that same year, he ended up writing Deathbed, which came out in 2000, came out a little bit later.
This guy is in the deathbed business.
Yeah.
Like, so there's a remake? Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, it's a 2002 remake. They said it was based on the film by George Barry, directed by Danny Draven. Came out in 2002, and it looks pretty much the same.
Is he related to Eric Draven from the what's the name of that movie?
The Crow.
Yeah,
I'm guessing not.
Would rather watch the remake. It's fascinating to me that they actually did, like, somebody put out, like, we're gonna make our own straight to DVD version before there was even a DVD version of Deathbed, the Bed That Eats, because this came out in 2002, the new Deathbed, and then the original Deathbed, as we mentioned, got released in 2003 to DVD.
This has got to be someone's, like, peanut butter solution where they weren't sure it was real, and it just existed where they couldn't buy it, and then eventually they find it again. Like, I just can't imagine this movie enduring since the 70s, and now we're propping it up even further.
Well, it has that thing that the peanut butter solution has too, even more so, where it feels kind of like a dream. Like, if you watch this, first of all, you're very likely to fall asleep during it because it's not real exciting.
I almost did last night, but it was also 2:30 in the morning, so it was getting a little late to be watching this.
It's not. There's never any tension. I don't say never. There's rarely any tension in a movie or a bed that has acid inside of it and sucks people down into the acid and dissolves them while they are still alive in some cases. There's not much of anything other than people just walking around. Oh, here's a bed. Lay down in the bed. I got 8. Oh no.
Oh, it's kind of like what you were saying. You tweeted that it's very brave of them to put 500 stories into a single movie.
It really is. He just keeps telling. And then there was this guy who got 8 by the bed. And you're like,
it's,
okay.
It's just an excuse to up the body count. Like, it'll be a random thing where the guy behind the painting is like, and you didn't like this pastor very much, did you? And it'll be like 40 seconds of the guy just like melting into the bed, and that's it. You never see the character again.
My favorite part of that is that he's like the priest that the bed eats, or the pastor, or whatever, a religiously affiliated man. He's reading from the Bible, and he's reading from the passage in the Bible where Lot's daughters are trying to get him drunk so they can have incest with him and have his baby. I seemed rather appropriate for this movie because there are some boobies and some sexy times going on from time to time.
Gratuitous use of that, which it didn't bother me in the slightest, but I was like, yeah, this is definitely a 70s horror movie.
It didn't seem that... It
wasn't vulgar in the nudity.
Yeah, it didn't feel like they were going with exploitation there. It was just... A lot of the boobs just felt like, all right, well, we have people having sex, so, you know, they get their boobs out when they have sex. They don't keep the bra on like a dumb PG-13 movie, because that's not how normal human beings operate. And then when the other girl, like the girl starts getting undressed to get into bed, and I was like, they're going to have her sleep naked in this strange bed? What a weird thing. And it's like, oh no, she's just putting on like a nightgown. And again, a normal person takes off one top and puts on another, and they just don't cut away from it. It's not like, here's some boobs shaking at the camera. So it was oddly like, it wasn't even, and it wasn't titillating, Tony. It wasn't like, ooh, where's the boobs gonna come in very often. It was just sort of, all right, yeah, okay, there's some boobs here.
Yeah, not exactly like some giant erotic movie, despite the thumbnail that they put on there on YouTube. This movie has 657,000 views, by the way.
For a free movie that's this popular, that actually seems kind of low to me.
I think a lot of people just try to quest for it and just can't, and that stops it from being shared more.
Yeah, I would think that you would just hear about it and like, go look it up. I mean, those views count the people who watched like a minute and stopped.
Yeah, that's true.
It doesn't tell you. There is the. Oh, wait a minute. YouTube has the stats for nerds, right?
Probably.
I know they do. I know they
I-
have.
It kind of surprised me we haven't seen a lot of gifs from this movie. Like, especially the preacher, like, just sinking into the bed, or him pulling his hands out and them just being bones. Like, I'm kind of surprised people on Reddit haven't locked onto that.
It's not. I don't think it's big enough in the popular culture. Here it is. Statistics. Let's see how many people. Average view duration from these 65 or 657,000 views is 4 minutes and 34 seconds.
That is not high for an 80-minute piece.
No. So we're looking at, this is not breaking the doors down in terms of popularity.
I mean, I hadn't heard of it until this week.
I had. Oh, you hadn't heard of it? Yeah, I
hadn't.
definitely knew what this was going into it. I've seen reviews of it. I think the Cinema Snob did one. And the great thing about this, I think, is that we talked about how it's not really exploitation. It feels a little bit like a guy who's trying to do like a thinky art piece. Like there's a little bit of pretension in there.
Yeah, like Low or whatever.
Yeah, Low. I don't want to. Despite the fact that I didn't love Low, I don't want to compare it to this. But on the other hand, you could feel them kind of trying. It's way better. I'm gonna say this: so much better than Birdemic.
Yeah,
Like by a lot, it's better than Birdemic. The acting is bad, but at least it's just like flat. Nobody ever reacts to anything, but they feel like that they might have actually been actors at some point.
There are a few really uncomfortable moments in this movie too. Like whenever the black girl has her legs like melted and she like crawls, and it takes like 4 minutes of her just crawling across the floor.
My favorite uncomfortable moment was the sawing necklace.
Yeah, that was a little bit crazy.
Because I saw her, like, the girl lays down on the bed. She has this, like, chain necklace on. And I thought of it before it happened. I was like, oh, man, what if the bed, like, sucked that into itself and, like, just, like, ripped her head off with the necklace. And then it didn't go that way. It, like, you see it saw back and forth, and it's not, like, a sharp chain, but you still
Yeah, it just goes, like, full bandsaw, though.
Ugh. It's so messed up.
Yeah, that girl did not have a good end.
I felt like that. For what it was, considering I'm sure that there was not a lot of budget going into this and the people did not have a lot of talent, I actually didn't mind the special effects that much.
Yeah, that actually was kind of what I was thinking too. It's a lot of shots where it's just like yellow liquid that's supposed to be acid, so you have an understanding there, but they take their time with a lot of things. Though the thing that bothered me the most is like that 70s sound design where it's just a little too loud.
Except for the voices.
Yeah, the voices are low, the crunching is insanely loud, and so is like the slurping noises and everything else.
But it wasn't, I mean, I couldn't bring myself to hate this film. It was a little bit boring. I think that I'm going to admit that I might have, like, not been watching the screen the whole time, which is not great because there's not, some of it is a lot of this guy just narrating, but then sometimes people are just walking around. So, and the editing is just atrocious.
Yeah.
I mean, real bad.
There's a point where he's like, the demon is asleep. This is the first time in 10 years. I can talk to them. And it's just so sudden and just out of nowhere.
No. You want my favorite sudden and out of nowhere thing was when there's the three girls that show up for the lunch segment of the movie, and the black girl and her friend, who I thought was gonna have a lesbian thing happen in this, but they didn't. It was sort of implied, but they never actually went there. They're like, oh, where's our friend Marsha or whatever? It's just like, oh, I'll go get her. Smash cut to her just like outside the house right there with Marsha, like, come on, let's go.
That was a hard cut too, especially because they implied that she was like a mile away.
Right. There was a lot of that. There was a lot of just sort of like, we're not going to show how anybody got anywhere unless it's the lady who had her feet eaten off with acid, in which case we'll have a long shot of her just dragging herself across the floor without cutting, which actually was fine. I'm not criticizing that. I thought that was actually pretty effective, but
and then they have like the sheet fly out and grab her.
Yeah, and that was a good effect. Again, I mean, I don't want to like. It's not Star Wars, obviously, but I thought for if I was making a cheap movie, I would be happy if I could get that effect happening for myself. I was just bugged by the fact that it took so long for anybody to do something about the bed. Like, I would be much more interested in like a Stephen King take on this premise. Like, the premise of itself of a bed that like pulls you down and dissolves you is really neat, but there's not like it doesn't focus on anything as far as people trying to fight it until the very, very end, where they're stuck in the room. You know, the guy does try to stab into it, and then he gets his hands burned off with acid, and he has goofy skeleton hands.
And he has to tell his sister to break off his hands because he can't stand it anymore.
Yeah, but it felt like that you could have gone in a different direction where it was just like, it was like, let's say you start off with the people sleeping in the bed, because horror movies generally start off with, here's what the thing is going to be. You know, you have your cold open, and then
like
you go
the
to your actual
demonstration of
character.
power type thing that you have.
Right, so you go ahead and you keep that scene, but then move on to some other people, and then they see one of their friends get eaten, and they have to do something about it. You know, they try to fight it instead of just, well, endlessly throwing people into the bed, basically, which is what the movie decided to do instead of that.
Yeah, there's a video on YouTube called "The Faces of Deathbed," and it's
Oh, yeah?
just all the different murders that happen in it.
The best part about that is the flashback sequence. Oh my gosh, the flashback sequence where he shows these newspapers flip up to the screen and it says thousands of people have been eaten by this bed. Like, and there was, at some point, there was just a rash of deathbed eatings. So much so that the mayor, like, makes a proclamation.
Mayor demands action.
And then he gets eaten by the deathbed. And there's no explanation for how it did any of that. It's like, what, did it teleport into other people's houses? Was this house just the happeningest place ever?
They kind of implied that because it's like this big, beautiful house, but they don't really say why, like, everybody just goes and visits it.
If 1,000 people died in my house, I guarantee you nobody would come over for a party.
But that's why the bed hadn't eaten in so long.
It's just like, you're saying like that newspaper clipping was from one night of eating?
No, I'm just saying, like, I think it would only take about 4 or 5 people before it stopped.
Yeah. Yeah, that to me is the most baffling thing. It basically, like, there's a potential for there to be a deathbed apocalypse of some kind where the deathbed just goes and eats everybody, but then they pull back and they're like, oh wait, no, he's stuck in the house for some reason. And
everybody just decides to fly to Milwaukee to find this deathbed.
Also, it smashed up the house that it was in. So they didn't like, I thought that was, it starts out in the big mansion and they don't do a real good job of showing the passage of time here at all. Like, you start off with, back in ancient times, there's a demon and this girl that we built a bed for so we could have sex with her. And you're like, how long ago is this? This looks like about 50 years ago. And then everything else also looks like it happened about 50 years ago. Because there's no costuming or whatsoever. The first people who get eaten go into the giant mansion, but they're wearing blue jeans and like normal 1970s type clothes. And then later the guy's like, but you beat up the house and that was mean. And look at all these statues crying blood for some reason. And now there's no giant house. It's just like the one room. Is it a House of Leaves situation?
That would make more sense than a lot of things.
I mean, that would be interesting. There are a ton of things that are just sort of like, this movie just kind of sidelong glances at and just rushes right past it. You think, well, that could be an interesting movie. But no, let's just see it as dissolve somebody else in acid.
Yeah, this is what happens whenever you get 2 drops of demon blood on a bed and it decides to turn into a demon itself.
Because the demon was in love. Or lust, possibly.
And it killed the girl that it was trying to hook up with. And so on and so forth.
Was the implication there that it just had sex with her until she died and it was really violent sex?
That's kind of the implication, but she also wasn't damaged at all.
Well, I thought that was maybe where the blood came from, but
that could make sense.
Maybe it was just like really like the best orgasm ever. Like it wasn't a little death. It was the pretty big death.
Yeah, the big sleep.
Well, by the way, I think everybody knows orgasm in French means little death. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Petite mort or whatever.
I'm making a reference, guys. I need everybody to know how smart I am. Carry on with your lives.
Yes. Al knows a total of 6 words in French, and one of them is orgasm. I mean, essentially, he's just getting down to business if he ever goes to France.
Oh, that's all anybody ever says to me when I'm in France.
They just walk up to you and they're like, petite mort? Like, question?
And I'm like, oui.
Oui, oui. Oh.
I don't know if I have anything else to say about this movie. The acting's real bad. Like, I mean, real, like, on purpose, I don't think there's no way that they meant for these people to be reacting in some way, because although I will give some props to the guy who got his hands melted off. Like, I would expect more screaming and like horrified, but his acting compared to everybody else in the movie felt positively, Oscar worthy. He actually seemed kind of bummed out that his hands got melted off. Everybody else was sort of like, what's going on? Where's everybody at? Oh, I'm getting melted by a bed. Oh no.
It's like, oh, my friends just died, and I'm just going to go lay down.
I do want to see this remake, though. I want to see this idea.
Who do you want to see remake this?
Well, it's already been remade. I want to watch the remake.
Oh, I'm saying, like, if someone were to remake this, if we wanted to get your ideal candidate.
If we wanted to get a third iteration of Deathbed, the Bed That Eats, Tony, is that what you're asking?
Yes,
if
part
we lived
3.
in that world? James Cameron.
James Cameron? I was thinking like J.J. Abrams.
No, for a real answer would be like Mike Flanagan. I would love to see where he would take it.
I could definitely see him having some fun with the topic. It would definitely be a lot creepier than this was, because this movie really was not that creepy.
I did like that it ate all the chicken out of the fried chicken bucket and then like put all the bones back.
Yeah, it just drank the wine, ate the chicken.
The scenes of it drinking like different liquids were pretty great. All the stuff, either blood or wine flowing into the water.
Or the Pepto-Bismol plug.
Yes. I don't think... Let's be real, Tony. Pepto-Bismol did not pay them any money for that. They just like had some Pepto-Bismol and they're like, we'll put this in the movie. It has odd moments where you think it's trying to be funny, like that moment where it's drinking Pepto-Bismol and you think, okay, well, this is... Maybe they're going for the laugh? I mean, it is called Deathbed, the Bed That Eats. Like, maybe they're actually doing this sort of ironically, but it never tries for any kind of real jokes.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be winning any sort of comedy awards. But I think you're right. I think we might need to move on from this. We've given Deathbed, the Bed That Eats 25 minutes.
It's eaten them all and dissolved them into acid. It spit out their minute bones, and nobody reacted.
At all.
I mean, we reacted more in this review than the people who anybody in this film reacted to anything.
That's just a weird level, like just super stoned styling that they had. I don't know if that was part of it or not, or if it was just really, really amateur actors. But
I said this already, but I'm gonna say it again. There was there were so many like directions this movie could have gone if it had a focus, right? If it had focused in on like, we're going to do this, we're going to be funny. It could have been funny. We're going to be like really creepy. It could have been creepy and horrifying. We're going to have a thriller. We're going to have, we have this great mythology. I thought the mythology of the bed was actually pretty interesting. Like you have at the beginning, the demon guy makes the bed and, tries to seduce the girl and whatever happens there. And now the bed eats people. But then like she comes back to burn it up. Spoilers, guys. I actually don't care about spoiling this movie.
It broke the 30-year mark a while ago. It's okay.
It did. So there was a lot of things about this that could have done well, and it just did not.
So that is the first movie for Viewers' Choice Month, and it might be the hardest one, judging by the list.
This is what you guys have wrought.
Yes.
I hope you're proud of yourself. You should be proud of yourself, Rich. I appreciate that. Appreciate you going out there and campaigning for something. I was upset because we weren't going to have this year's Pippi on the Run. John Jones like pushed really hard last year for Pippi on the Run, and like that was a big kind of story that came out of that. And this one, Yeah, this feels like that, but for this year.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's the most jarring movie experience I'll have for a little while, I think.
I'm gonna say the most boring movie experience I'm gonna have for a while. You know what wasn't boring? I just want to put a plug in for this because I saw it over the weekend. Don't Breathe, the movie that's in theaters right now that I'm sure you've heard of if you're listening to our podcast because it's up there in the horror movie circles. That is an excellent not creepy is not the right word, but very tense, very very good at sort of building up a real sense of tension movie. I just wrote the rundown on it, and I absolutely loved it. I think I don't want to oversell it because it's not like
I'm going tonight, so I haven't seen it yet, but I will
it
definitely
didn't
be seeing it.
blow my mind. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, that's the best movie I've ever seen, but it was just real good. It was just real solid. Sometimes horror fans get like, well, everybody talks about this movie. I didn't think it was like the best thing since peanut butter and jelly combined. Well, go and sit in some poop somewhere because that's what you need to do.
Which is basically watching a lot of the lower end horror movies out there.
Yes. Speaking of possibly lower end horror movies, did you see the trailer for the movie Rings?
I did.
It
looks kind of silly.
It has what I wanted though. It has some okay. First of all, I don't know if they're gonna do. I really want to see Samara come through a cell phone screen. I want to see how that works.
I'd be really surprised if that doesn't happen in this movie.
But I did like that. One of the things that we see them do with the idea is, first of all, they push the idea of how the physics of it work. So they start off by showing a TV that's fallen onto the ground and of course it's flat screen TVs now because we're not heathen cavemen. And she pokes her arm up underneath of that and pushes the TV away from the ground, so you can see her interacting with the outside world from her inside world. That was pretty rad. But the ending, I wasn't sold on the movie until the very last part of the trailer where they showed her coming out of the screens inside of an airliner that is in flight.
There really is nowhere to go in that situation.
Well, yeah, but you'd think okay, well, she can't get us up here. I mean, I don't know why you would think that because she's a supernatural weirdo entity, but whatever. I don't think that's having thought about it after this. I actually don't think it's going to be what I thought it was going to be, but initially I was sure it would be she was attacking everybody on the plane.
That's kind of what it looked like. Because she went onto every screen on the plane.
Well, how would all of those people have watched the tape though? They just didn't make sense after I thought about it after a bit.
Yeah, I didn't say it had to make sense. It just is what it looked like.
I wanted that to be the case. I wanted it or maybe they played the tape on the news, or it did go viral, it was on the internet, and all those people just happened to see it on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah, and Samara was just like, you know what? It's close enough to 7 days.
Well, I'm just saying, maybe she does that all over. Maybe that one airplane sequence is indicative of what's happening. Again, we talked about this in our review of The Ring. Samara apocalypse. Just everybody saw the tape and she's just like, all right, well, busting out of all y'all's TVs simultaneously. I don't know how that would work. I don't know if she can be multi-present, but I want to see.
Rings is going to answer a lot of questions we didn't know we had.
I had them. I think I'm pretty sure I raised them in the Ring review.
Either way, it doesn't look like it's going to be a great movie, but it's one that I want to see.
I don't know if I'm gonna see it. The thing is, it feels like the kind of movie I could very easily be talked out of being excited about. But that trailer got me excited. I know I watched a lot of people, especially on the horror subreddit. They're like, "This looks dumb." Whoa. I'm like, "Gosh, did you see her attack an airplane? Did you see that happen? She attacked the whole airplane. How did you guys not fall in love with that?" Not everybody is like me, Tony. Not everybody's weird.
Yeah. Well, you like a lot of things that attack airplanes. Sharks, all sorts of stuff.
Anything that's not another airplane attacking an airplane is pretty great. Time portals attacking airplanes, volcanoes attacking airplanes.
No, that was a satellite that fell in love with an airplane, wasn't it?
It didn't fall in love, okay? It just went rogue and started hurling its compatriots out of the sky at random things. An air
Uh,
collision you're talking about?
yeah, I thought part of the plot was that like the AI fell in love with this plane.
No. The AI, the AI in that wasn't like anything that you could reason with or have any kind of interest in. It was just sort of, I'm evil now. I'm an AI. You turned me on and you shouldn't have. And now everything will die. And I'm going to hurl my satellites out of the sky for some reason. I don't know why I'm committing suicide. Oh no! I'm going to smash into this gas station though.
Was it Birdemic style explosions?
It was the it's the asylum, so their effects are they're practiced at being bad. It's not like it wasn't like that. And there was more of them. It wasn't like Birdemic where you're like, whoa, look at the city. It's all gone. We're never going to see that shot again. Air Collision. I haven't seen it in a while, Tony. It's one of my favorite airplane movies from the Asylum.
That was first season of Albert versus the Asylum, isn't it?
Second season.
Second season.
It might be first season now that you think about it.
Oh, you can find it on our channel on YouTube.
Yeah, I love that movie. Oh man, I gotta watch the trailer again. You made me think about it. You made me think about Air Collision again.
Well, we know what Al's going to be doing for 2 hours later today.
It's not too. It's only an hour and a half, Tony. It's the Asylum.
That's true. I don't think any of their movies I've seen have gone more than 90 minutes.
No, they have a real hard cutoff. I think sometimes they'll release like an uncut version that's a little longer. I know that the Dead 7 movie that they made that I never did get through is going to release a longer one. By the way, I did want to follow up on something. Speaking of the Asylum, since we're talking about bad movies, Tony, and nobody can get mad at us because we definitely started out talking about some bad movies. I saw Elvis Lives, the movie we talked about a while back on the show. It's not it wasn't great, but it was it was interesting because the guy who played Elvis was actually like not doing an Elvis impression. He just kind of had a little bit of a southern accent to him, and I was expecting something much more over the top.
I mean, considering some of the Elvis movies we do have, you kind of need to go over the top with that.
They did not, I will say, they did not follow up with the promise of we're going to do for Elvis Presley what we did for Sharks and Tornadoes, because they didn't. There was so many, like, there's a part in that movie where he's helping the FBI do a deal with the mob, like, so that the FBI can catch this mob boss, and that was a cool idea, right? Like, you've got him sort of undercover, and one of the through lines for the movie that actually works pretty well is that he wants to be in law enforcement. He wants to make a real difference and kind of feels dissatisfied with how his life is going. There's actually some interesting character stuff going on in there in what's not a great movie. But the scene where he's talking to the gangster takes up like 10 minutes and that's it. And I just like thought, well, why don't we just have Elvis shooting gangsters for the rest of the movie? Why do we have to deal with all this drama crap about, Lisa Marie and his daughter and the woman that we see at the beginning of the movie? You know what? Nobody saw that movie, so I don't want to go into details, but it felt like it could have been better. And we're not reviewing Elvis Lives, Tony, but
we could have been.
Well, I did want to mention it though, because we talked
to.
about it. It just ended up being a little bit boring and not awful. I'll probably do a review of it at some point because there's some really good elements to it that didn't quite come together.
I definitely hear you there.
Did we get any questions this week?
We got one question. It's actually related more to the writer's arena than to the podcast.
Oh, well, we can't take it then.
The question is, how the heck did you get Grammar Girl to be a judge?
Well, you answered that one, Tony. I didn't do anything. I sat over here in my chair and somebody tweeted me, "Hey, we've got Grammar Girl as a judge."
Yeah, did that add any pressure to
boss.
your round? That you were getting judged by the Grammar Girl?
No. I mean, I want to say yes. I want to be like, absolutely, I was sweating bullets, but not really. I wrote in basically the same way that I always write.
It was a good story too. I always
Thank
like
you.
World War I stories.
I definitely, Joe's said his one criticism was that he felt like it was a little bit on the nose, but I'm generally, I err more on that side of things than sort of like, what was that story about? I won't, like, if I'm going to say something, I want to say it so you understand what I'm saying. And what I was saying in that story was war, and specifically World War One in particular, suck.
But yeah, all we had to do was ask. Mignon Fogarty is awesome. We caught her at the right time, right before she started going back to school. So just want to take a quick second to thank her for being a guest judge over at the Writers Arena. If you guys don't know, since we do have a lot of new listeners on here, the writersarena.com is something that we run where we write stories every week. It was Iron Chef for authors, essentially, where we have two authors go head to head. They have a prompt, they have 10 days, and they have to come up with the best story that they can. Then our judges and our audience agrees with it. Sorry for the mini promo there, but yeah.
I'm not sorry. It's a cool product, and
yeah, it really
a lot of people really enjoy it. Like for instance, the story that I had to write, I got my prompt on was UFOs. So, and they specifically said it doesn't have to be flying saucers; it's just any unidentified flying object. So my UFO is this like Burning Man that appears in the sky over this battlefield in World War One, and it's kind of about the sort of feeling of being abandoned by those above you. He doesn't do anything to change anything. He's just sort of watching as these people die. And Rich took it a little bit more literally with some lights. Tony, you're up this week with the burglary robbery
heists.
Yeah,
I'm a little bit worried about this story because I hated the one that I turned in, even though the other one might have been better. It's so hard to be suggestive on this stuff because I turned in one on Wednesday and I was like, this story sucks, and I restarted and did it on Saturday. So it was a busy weekend.
Well, your competitor I wanted to bring up is Alicia Arringdale, who's I believe the wife of Arthur Arringdale, who has been a friend of ours in various places.
Yep,
in the past.
He bought us a shake while you were in Denver.
Yes.
So
had a great conversation at the very first HEPCon.
Yep. So that is his wife. I've only got to meet her once or twice, like whenever I was working with Arthur back in the day. So it's just really cool to actually see her come to the arena. She was tweeting about how she hadn't had any structure to her writing for a while, how it was a lot of getting writing done, but not really having an end or deadlines or anything to challenge her. It's like, well, I've read some of your stuff before. I know it's solid. We have a challenge for you. She was a little freaked out to join, but like once she got into it, she said that having that deadline that somebody else imposed actually made it really, really interesting, and it kind of helped her to thrive in making this story.
I do love that element of the writer's arena. I did want to say, sort of going back around to the heart of the original question, you said we just asked, and I think that's real important people to remember in real life is you can ask people for things. Like, don't be a mooch. Don't be all going around like, I need you to do this. I need you to do this. Do some work yourself. But as podcasters and stuff, we've learned we can get interviews with people by saying, hey, do you want to do an interview with us? And sometimes they say no. And sometimes they say yes. And we don't have to tell you about the people who said no. We'll just air the ones for people who said yes.
We've always, like, everyone that said no has also been polite about it. They've been like, hey, this is a really bad month for me to have any extra time. Hit me up another time. Or I think the worst we've gotten was, I think I'm going to pass on this. Thank you anyway. So it's like, it's people saying no politely. And we sent out like 5 or 6 emails for guest judges for the Writers Arena. 3 out of 5 said yes. And that's we've got Alistair Stewart coming up from the Pseudopod podcast. He's going to be a guest judge. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff that's happening with that. If you have authors that you want us to try to contact, let me know, and we'll try to get them as guest judges. Obviously, we're gonna try for Stephen King, but I have a feeling he's a little busy.
Yes, but again, we can ask, and he can say no or ignore us, and we've lost basically nothing. That's the great thing about asking.
Yep.
I'm going to pivot away from that because there was another trailer that came out this week that had me real excited. It's actually the second one for this particular product, and it was the trailer for Westworld on HBO, the TV show. Have you seen anything about this yet, Tony?
I saw the trailer, yes. That looked kind of fascinating.
So you didn't see the original movie, right?
I have not.
It doesn't look much like I'm sorry. I looked at Twitter and Rich Alex is asking.
Yeah, I just got that too.
Why didn't they say anything about the eyeball?
Which is actually pretty apt for the podcast because we didn't say anything about the eyeball, but that was one of the weirder scenes in the entire movie.
The deathbed just spits up okay, we've stopped talking about Westworld for a second. The bed just spits up an eyeball at one point, and like it rolls around and nobody says anything. That's one of those moments that made me think they were going for comedy because the pun there is obviously the bed rolled an eye at them.
Yeah. And it also is just like sitting in the fluid, like dancing around for way too long, just like obviously on a string, just being bobbed.
Why are these people all so tired when they don't do anything? It's a magic bed, Rich. Yeah, you gotta listen. Haven't you heard of suspension of disbelief? Your disbelief is suspended in yellow acid, and it gets eaten away until there's nothing left but disbelief bones.
And what do you do with disbelief bones?
I don't know. What do you do with disbelief bones?
I was hoping you had a punchline.
You bone up on them. Nailed it.
We actually got like a slight flood of questions on my phone and on Twitter at the same time. But let's talk
no.
about Westworld.
I want to finish talking about Westworld though.
Yes.
So they're taking the original Westworld movie it was basically like Jurassic Park. You know, who knows what Michael Crichton has against theme parks, but it was like Jurassic Park, but with cowboy robots instead of dinosaurs. And I don't know why he didn't just have the robot cowboys fight the dinosaurs and have the two parks combined, because that would have been Robot Cowboys versus Dinosaurs is a movie that I wouldn't mind seeing.
That's basically like Al's wet dream.
This really feels like they're going a lot deeper than just, oh my gosh, scary robots. We have to fight them. Yul Brynner is evil. He's so sexy. When he's shooting at me and his hair is bald. That's why Albert has a shaved head. No, for real. Yul Brynner. Big part of the reason I shaved my head. But they're going into like questions of what does it mean to be artificially intelligent? Are these machines have consciousness and they believe the simulation that they're in? Like they believe that they are people and that they are part of this story that they are playing out with these people who are paying customers to be there. And then some of them start to realize what it is. And it's kind of a waking up sort of, not quite like the Matrix, obviously, because that's a whole different can of worms, but essentially the robots are the ones who are the slaves and persecuted, and they have to rise up against their human masters. And it looks amazing. It's like it's one of those 10 episode HBO things that is it supposed to go on beyond that? Is it going to be like an extended thing where they'll keep having more Westworld, or is it just going to be like, here's your miniseries?
It sounded like a miniseries, but I have a feeling that if it's super successful, they could probably find another way to make it work.
So somebody just opens up another park. I mean, money does talk.
Yes. But like letting HBO do a 10-part miniseries is basically the way I want to view most adaptations from now on, unless the adaptation is for some dumb book that nobody wants to see. But this, like, just the effects and everything, it looks like it's a big budget like movie.
It does.
It looks like it's going to be really interesting.
They've got like Anthony Hopkins in there, which
it's like, how do you get Anthony Hopkins into a TV show?
I mean, he is in Thor.
Yeah. I know he's not exactly like at the level he was whenever he did Silence of the Lambs, but it's still Anthony Hopkins.
I mean, you think he's diminished at some point since then?
Only in like some of the movies he's been in where he's been average. Like they had that movie The Right and things like that, but that was more poor writing, not on him.
Okay. I haven't I'm not a aficionado of him, but I've never, like, even when he's playing Odin, I didn't feel like, well, he's just phoning that in. He seems like he's doing the best he can, kind of with the material, and I mean, probably having some fun with it, and obviously not bringing the level of depth to it that he might have brought to something like Hannibal Lecter, but still, he definitely brings that weight wherever he goes, and I am all on board with this.
When does that come out anyway?
It's soon. I think it's like October. I'm gonna look. You know what? I can look, Tony. Westworld will premiere on Sunday, October 2nd at 9 p.m.
October 2nd. That is pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, they've been working on it for over 2 years now.
I feel like there's something important on that day, but I can't remember what. Do you ever have that feeling whenever somebody's like, oh, do you want to do something later this month? And like you just completely forget that you've got something giant and important. Like I made a bunch of plans to leave town on the day that I had a panel.
Wait, so what you're saying is you made a panel during the time that you had actual real plans? Do you want to talk about how that went? I don't know if that's actually going to be funny. I'm not actually trying to drag you out into the light of day if you don't want to talk about that, but that seems like it could be interesting.
It was definitely one of those things where you kind of feel like, well, let me go back a little bit. I was supposed to do a panel on Saturday at Fort Collins Comic-Con. Small con, about 5 to 7,000 people end up showing up, but it's a cool little place. It's at like this little community center, and it's fun. You got a lot of people cosplaying. It's just a good little community thing. And I applied to get a panel there because I really wanted to start getting experience running a few panels. I like public speaking to a point. Like anytime that I actually get like into it, I actually get really into it. It's more the lead up that I have a lot of nerves for. Al saw a little bit of the nerves that I was having there whenever we were doing some practice stuff. And whenever I get there, like I'm all excited. I'm there 3 hours earlier than I probably should have been. And I'm getting set up. I've got everything. I have the big poster for the writers arena up. I was doing a panel on the importance of short stories for beginning authors. And it got categorized wrong. It got categorized as something for kids, not as something for writers. And it just didn't make it onto anybody's radar. I went from being in a room that was a full packed room for a panel about dungeon mastering to a completely empty room where I was like literally just standing there hitting a punching bag for about 20 minutes waiting to see if anybody was going to show up.
Tony brought his own punching bag just in case there weren't anybody there. Just in case nobody shows up that I can punch, I brought my own bag.
Yes, that was part of the panel. This is how you throw a proper right hook.
He brought backup material in case he ran out.
Actually, I don't know how to throw a right hook. I know how to throw a left hook. Right hook is just like awkward.
I don't know what a right hook or a left hook is. By the way, there's some choking methods in Don't Breathe that you might enjoy having some comments about next week.
I wonder if they did it right or if they did it wrong. Al probably doesn't know.
I couldn't tell. It looked pretty convincing, I will say that. Also, it looked more like an armbar, I think, than the rear naked choke.
Yeah.
He wasn't using the crook of his elbow. He was like using... Anyway.
Was he using his crotch to try to break somebody's elbow?
Not in that.
Because that's how an armbar works.
Well, maybe not then. I don't know. He had him by the neck. It just wasn't like in the crook of his elbow.
That was a real surprise the first time I tried to put on an armbar, not wearing a cup.
You want to elaborate on that?
Basically, like, I haven't done a ton of jiu-jitsu stuff. My spine always makes me nervous, especially around other people that are new like me towards jiu-jitsu. Because whenever you actually get your hands on somebody and you're like, holy crap, I'm in a position I might be able to tap him out, you like jerk really hard. And I just have this vision of my spine with all of its extra fusion going on where somebody just like pops something and like a little bone shard goes into my spine and I'm paralyzed or something like that. Because there are a lot of calcium deposits in the joints of my spine. It's a little weird looking on the X-ray these days. And anyway, I get in a position I actually like I get full mount on this person, and then I try to throw the arm bar, and I go back and I yank their arm and basically just crush my nuts. Just absolutely crush them. And I didn't realize that like it was just all like it was seconds. It was just really, really fast. Like whenever you're in a fight, like you start kind of doing like information chunking more than anything else. You're not thinking about it. And if you're thinking about it, you're kind of out of the moment and you just go quickly. And I didn't think about how I should probably do this slightly to the sides or be wearing a cup in general if I'm fighting somebody. And yeah, arm bars are not good whenever you don't have a cup.
Okay. Wear a cup if you're going to fight somebody with an arm bar. Good advice.
Yeah. If you're going to be in a fight, you should probably wear a cup in general.
Yeah, I guess. That seems like... It doesn't seem like a good method to know for like just the average person going into a fight. I mean,
the reason why it's effective is because the average person doesn't know how to defend it. They don't know how to roll out of it. And there are a lot of defenses that can work for it. Like you don't see a lot of them finish in MMA. You'll see a lot of people use that as a setup or as an escape method or just kind of like a desperate attempt to end the fight. Because I've seen, it's probably been 5 to 10 events since I've seen an armbar actually finish somebody. But it does happen. It's not as rare as like a Darce choke or some of these other ones or like a Bulldog choke, some of these different ones that are out there. So it is a very effective method even against professionals. But if you're going up against somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, they're not going to be able to get away. Like if you think back to Green Room, they were able to have the jiu-jitsu guy hold down that huge guy just by keeping him in an armbar position for a long period of time.
I'm not gonna lie, I may have a little bit just totally tuned out and started watching GIFs while you were talking. Because I don't know anything what you're saying right now. But I'm sure people who know about MMA are absolutely nodding their heads and saying, yes, that armbar. All the yes. I do wonder, I guess the point that I'm making is, like, just if there's a method that requires you to smash your nuts, you're not going to be able to do that in a regular fight.
Oh, you can. You just have to put the fulcrum point on your inside leg instead of your nuts.
Okay.
It's about the approach.
I was gonna say, because I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I'm not walking around wearing a cup all of the time, expecting to get into a fight where I will have to throw an armbar on somebody. So that would not be good advice for me.
If I was at an MMA gym, I should have been wearing a cup. That is probably all you'll be hearing about me talking about my balls this week. So we'll move on from there.
Should I talk about my balls?
That usually happens on the bonus podcast. It's like, if there's anything we can rely on for Al, it's that his junk or Gilmore Girls will make it into a product.
Listen, you don't know how actively I try to avoid talking about the second thing that you just mentioned there. Like, there are a lot of times where I'm like, there's a show that I watch where they do that sometimes, and it's Gilmore Girls, okay? But I do try not to saturate you because I know how your feelings are on that. But yeah, I watch that show. That's all. You guys know about that. So anyway.
We did get a couple other questions, so I'm going to
hit me with a couple other questions. And I do want to ask, should we talk about Gene Wilder real quick?
We'll talk about that in just a moment.
Okay.
Caleb Newell, at Priority Default on Twitter, asks, what grammatical error do you see most frequently in the wild?
Oh, I do wrong a lot.
Yeah, I always do that in texting, and I always try to correct it because I don't want people thinking I don't know the difference. It's just sometimes I'm like in the middle of writing a sentence and I'm not thinking about it.
Right. Also, a lot of words that sound different than they're written down, like when people say should of instead of should have, I'll see a good number of that when I'm on a good number of that. Yes, that's good grammar. I'll see a good amount of that when I'm on Reddit. Not just that specific mistake, but there's a lot of those words that. What's the other one? For all intents and purposes, where people use the word intense, like, oh, he's intense.
Intense purposes.
So those are the big ones that I notice.
I feel like this would be a question for Joe, just because he edits the Writers Arena every week. He's the one that polishes up our stuff. Sometimes whenever I throw terrible story at him, he makes it strong again. So that would be a question for Joe. Maybe we'll throw that onto the bonus podcast.
Speaking of tense, that's one that is really difficult to keep track of and know exactly how to use, because sometimes you'll be talking about something and then sort of want to not switch tenses in the middle of it, but you don't want to switch tenses. Like in the proper, there was a couple of sentences in the rundown that I wrote today where I was like, is this the right tense to use? And that one's a lot subtler to catch than just sort of like, well, you spelled that word wrong or you used the wrong one. Like you have to like look up like, oh wait, yeah, okay, I didn't. That's the kind of grammar that you don't see get corrected as often because it's harder to catch. But it's also, I think, important to understand the mechanics of which tense to use when.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I have a little bit of trouble with. I end up Googling a lot about tenses, just trying to make sure that I'm on point there.
So do you have another question?
The last question is, in the apocalypse, what 5 people or things would you want to have with you?
5 people or things. So like I can have 3 people and 2 things, or 1 person and 4 things, or
I think I would need to have a solar powered refrigerator, because if you can keep your food cold, you're going to have a lot easier time than a lot of these things. Like you'll be able to keep your meat longer. You'll be able to actually have preservation. So even if it's just like
make evaporation powered cooling jars for people who don't have access to power. It's like 2 clay pots, one inside the other. And then like in between the layers of the clay pots, you put like wet sand or wet rags or something, and the evaporation, and then of course you cap it off real good, and the evaporation of the water out of the wet rags um, helps keep the inside of the pots cool. Not like refrigerator cool, but your meat doesn't go bad in 5 hours cool.
That's an interesting idea. I wouldn't have thought of that.
I mean, it's one of those things that they do in developing countries where people like don't have power and also don't have money, and it's like, it's something real simple because it's just made out of clay and uses water, so they can do that, and it greatly extends the lifespan of their food, which is another one of those reasons that people do starve in those types of areas is that they just can't preserve their food at all.
I think one of the people I'd have to bring is Les Stroud. Like, just
I
bring
heard you
Survivor
Googling
Man.
him. I heard.
I was thinking like Survivor Man, and I'm like, what the hell is his name? I've heard him on 5 podcasts before. What the hell is his name? And as I was typing out Survivor Man, I remembered it was Les Stroud. Because I kept thinking of Bear Grylls, but he's a little bit of a phony.
I think if he was actually out, I mean, he's a phony on his TV show, but I think he actually does know how to survive in the wild. He just doesn't want to do it every day.
Yeah,
I can
he's
respect
also
that.
like former special forces and all that, so he's climbed Everest. I'm sure he could get up, or he would be good to have. But still, Les Stroud's a little more hardcore.
I'm trying to think. I would want a bicycle. I think a bicycle would be invaluable in the apocalypse, despite what Zombie Apocalypse the movie says. And as much as I love that movie, by the way, talking about asylum movies, but I think, especially in like the zombie apocalypse, having a no fuel way to get around pretty quickly would be invaluable.
Yeah, plus it's not a lot of effort to pedal a bike. Like, you get going 25, 30 miles an hour easy on a clear road. You can outrun most zombies. Like, I definitely would suck if one just like got out in front of you and you went end over end, but you're going to be facing stuff like that anyway. I'd much rather be on a bike than be on foot.
Right, and a motorcycle is sort of like a good alternative, or maybe you could get like a moped, but
It's
I don't
loud.
think. Well, there's that. You could get not all loud. Not all
Loud pipes
motorcycles have
save
to have
lives.
loud pipes. So
Well, whenever I was reading World Wars, no, it wasn't World War Z. It was the Zombie Survival Handbook, which I think is actually made by Mel Brooks.
Max
Or
Brooks.
Not Mel Brooks, Max Brooks. That would be an entirely
they
different
are related,
thing.
but
Yes.
different people.
It kind of makes sense after listening to a panel from Max Brooks talking about his dad and like how everybody thinks of his dad as like just the silly Jewish guy, and he knows his dad as the hardcore World War II guy. And about how like his entire childhood was spent like in the woods preparing for survival and all this. So it kind of makes sense that he would go on to make books like that. But in the Zombie Survival Handbook, he talks about how if there's a vehicle that you want the most, it's going to be a dirt bike because it's the most versatile. It can get over a lot of terrain and it's going to use the least amount of gas.
Also, you can pick it up if you need
Yeah.
to. Like if you're like, oh, I haven't run up to this rock or something. Like if you can climb up it, you can probably pull the dirt bike up.
Yeah. Whereas, like, if you're on a Harley, you get the benefit of looking cool, but it's about 500 pounds more.
And won't go in the woods or really anywhere that isn't paved.
Yep.
That wasn't 5 items. I feel like, so we have our dirt bike, we have our regular bike, we have our pot, we have our Survivor Man.
I think the next thing is water. Like, you got to have some form of, like, consistent water purification.
I would do one of those big, like, upside down tent things. I think I could build one of those out of stuff I could find around with the zombie apocalypse where you like make, somehow you get a big plastic sheet, the bigger the better, really, and you hang it from its corners, and then in the middle of it you put something to put that, like a weight or whatever, to make that point be the bottom so it's sort of like a cone, and then what happens is condensation forms on the bottom of it and rolls down towards that middle point, and you have a jar or a bottle or something there to catch the water as it rolls down into it, and you get your own sort of condensation collector.
I've always wanted to do that in the desert where you use like saran wrap over a hole and put like just a water bottle or some sort of collecting receptacle at the bottom. I just want to see how much you would actually get in a day or two of leaving it there.
That's an interesting experiment. I mean, there's the question too of how long do you leave it there? Like, do you do it during the day or during the night? When would there be moisture in the air? Because you can't just sit in one place. Well, maybe you can. I know that's sort of the advice of survival experts, but
Yeah.
if you're
Well,
trying to get somewhere, if you're like, well, I have to get out of the desert, then you can't just wait forever for the water.
if you had like some crazy base or something like that you were going back to, and you just had pits everywhere that were harvesting water, like how
I'm
much
all
would you
about
be
that
able to
base.
yield?
All about that base. All about
No
that
trouble.
base. No trouble. Yep. We're running over time, Tony, but I did want to mention Gene Wilder, who passed this week at 84. I've seen a lot of y'all, maybe not you personally, but a lot of people on the internet kind of complaining like, oh man, there's another reason 2016 sucks. He did live 84 years and put out a good amount of good stuff and seems to have had a good life. And I don't think we get to just like have a hissy fit every time somebody dies at that age.
At the same time, like, it does suck because it's just a reminder of all these great people that are passing pretty quickly. And like, as far as musical goes, like, Willy Wonka's probably the best one for me. Like, I'm sure there's people that are going to disagree with me on that, but it's probably my favorite personally. And the way Gene Wilder just played Willy Wonka, it was one of the earliest people to really make me laugh. One of the earliest movies that I saw on a regular basis was Willy Wonka. Was one of my absolute favorites, and I loved him in Young Frankenstein. I loved him in any of the movies I got to see him with. Any movie with him and Richard Pryor was awesome. Like, it was just seriously, like, he was an amazing man. He was an amazing actor, and I'm glad that he got to have a good long life. And 84 is like almost 10 years longer than the average man, so he wasn't doing too bad there.
Yeah, and I think that maybe there's some of this again with people like David Bowie and with Prince, going somewhat, before we would have liked them to. That's a different thing, and I understand when somebody goes before their time, but we should really just celebrate someone's. I think anyway, celebrate the life and like. You can't like people are it sucks, guys. I get it. I'm not enjoying it either, but people are eventually going to die, all of us and all of the people that we love, and let's enjoy what he gave us and not like act like every time somebody dies it's the worst tragedy in the world. It bugs me a little bit when that's just the default, like, oh, 2016, why are you screwing us again? Every year is going to have things like this. Maybe
Well, the start of this year went pretty quick with Bowie and Alan Rickman and people like that. But then again, like, last year sucked, or 2015 sucked whenever you lost like Spock and everybody else.
Yeah.
So death sucks. I don't know. I got nothing else.
Death sucks, but it is part of the existence. Do you think? I know we're going long again, but do you think that it's partly because those of us who are on the internet more, the sort of millennial generation from 1980s and up, are seeing more of our heroes die than we have previously, just because we are aging up and the people who we kind of watched in movies as kids were at least 20 years older than us.
Yeah,
and now that's going to start happening more and more often.
Well, I've thought it was pretty much that we're actually starting to see what our parents went through when we were kids, and we'd see our parents upset at some celebrity or someone like that dying. Like, it's our turn to start dealing with that for the greater elements of our childhood, like us losing Robin Williams and all these other people. Like, it's just kind of how, like, it's just going to get worse from here is basically what I'm trying to say. Also, we have a bigger awareness of everything that's happening now because there is so much information going out there. That's why the world seems like a worse place today than it really is we're meant to be in like tribes of a few hundred people. We're not meant to take in the tragedies of 7 billion.
And you can't.
Yeah,
I don't feel bad
if
you can't care about everything. As long as you care about something and the people close to you, that's the important thing. Because I had to deal with that a while back. Where it's just like, I cannot be outraged over every bad thing that happens in the world because I would be exhausted.
Yeah, I've actually hit that point before on social media, like, where it's just like it's social media, it's Reddit, it's all these other things where it's just so exhausting to it felt like I was pretending to be mad about stuff or pretending to be like enthralled by something, and it's like he kind of had to take a step back a little bit.
So that was the end of our really fun podcast, the Human Echoes podcast. Lots of fun, lots of jokes. Everybody happy. And yeah, Tony, tell them what they can do to help us out to continue being happy and awesome.
There are a few different ways to help us out. The free ones are obviously share this with your friends, tell them about it, send out a tweet, hit a Facebook like, anything like that really, really helps the podcast out. The next thing you can do, and probably the most important thing, is to become a member at humanechoes.com. If you become a member, you get access to the bonus podcast, which is our favorite product that we put out. It's just Joe, Al, and I goofing around and having a really good time. We've got some of that stuff archived. If you look far back enough, you can download a sample. Also, at the different tiers of membership, you can get postcards, you can get pins, you can get shout outs, you can get a lot of really, really cool stuff. We've seen a bunch of new members coming up. We've been throwing shout outs whenever we can. So I want to thank the new members who are listening to this, and also ask that some of you consider giving $2, $5, or $10 a month to keep this podcast going. $2 doesn't sound like a lot. It's only a few pennies a day, but it's worth more than 1,000 advertising hits on YouTube. Like it's amazing how far $2 can actually go for supporting the content that you enjoy.
And you guys are awesome. We really appreciate it. We have another new one. You would have heard at the beginning of this episode us announcing another new member. It's just, it keeps rolling and keeps rolling, and we're excited. It's a great time to be a hepster, Tony.
Yeah, definitely.
Next week, again, we announced that this week would probably be Evil Dead 2. That turned out not to be because Deathbed, the Bed That Eats jumped into the lead. However, I feel, again, pretty confident that we might be doing Evil Dead 2 next week.
Yeah, we're probably doing that. I wanted to watch Evil Dead 1, then watch Evil Dead 2. I've seen them both, but I wanted to have a refresher on the series. So we kind of just went with Deathbed, the Bed That Eats today. So sorry about
at the top of the list
there.
But that too, but also Deathbed was at the top of the list, which is sort of our de facto thing. I expect Evil Dead 2 to stay at the top of the list, but there's one more full day of voting as we're recording this, so probably Evil Dead 2.
All right,
90%.
We will see you guys next week.
Bye.